Hello, this video is the introduction to one of the Stories at Home family project folders. Now, this topic is all about folk tales, fairy tales if you like, but popular stories. Some of them I'm sure you'll recognise. I thought I'd tell you a story just to get you going. Maybe one of the stories that connects to one of the little module downloadable programs. Maybe the one on kings, but we'll come back to that afterwards. It's one of my favourite stories, and it's called The Ship That Sailed on Land. And it starts with a king. Long ago, there were kings seemingly ruled every country. Nowadays, countries are run in lots of different ways, and kings and queens aren't as important as they used to be. But this king was important. Well, he thought he was important. He thought he was very, very special indeed, and that everybody had to do exactly what he said. You know, he was one of those kings who might wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, clap his hands, and the servant would come in rubbing his eyes, and the king would say, "A bit hungry. Oh, get me a plate of chips." "Yes, your majesty," would say the servant, and down to the kitchen, wake up the cook. "The king wants some chips, you have to cook them now." And the sleepy cook would have to make chips there and then, and the king wouldn't even bother to say thank you. You're right, he was one of those kings, the sort who would go, "Bring me an ice cream. I'll have a pink and purple one with blue spots." And the poor servant would have to go down to the kitchen and say, "He wants ice cream now." "Oh, well, I've got strawberry or vanilla, maybe chocolate." "No, he wants pink ice cream with purple spots." Oh, that sort of king. If he didn't get what he wanted, it was that sort of king. One day the king had a great idea. "I want you to bring me a ship," he said. "Well, your majesty," said all the servants and all the helpers and wise men, "you have a whole harbour full of ships. You have a whole navy full of ships. Why do you need another ship?" "No, you don't understand," said the king. "I want something different, something that no other king has. I want a ship that sails on the land." "But your majesty," said the king, "ships don't sail on land. They sail on water." "Oh, I know that," said the king. "That's why I want something different. Bring me a ship that sails on land." "Well, I'm sorry," said all the advisers. "We can't do that." "Oh, I thought not," said the king. "If you want something doing round here, you have to do it yourself, and that's what I shall do. I shall do it myself." And he did what he always did when he couldn't get his way. He wrote a proclamation, and he sent it round to all the areas of the country where it was nailed up, in every village, every town, every hamlet, every place there were people living. And it said, "I will give a bag of gold and the princess's hand in marriage to anybody who can bring me a ship that sails on the land." Well, nobody could. Nobody knew even how to start making a ship that sailed on the land, because ships, by their very nature, sail on water. Well, the words of the proclamation travelled round the country, and eventually the words found their way to a forest, and in the forest lived 3 woodcutters, 3 brothers who took care of the wood and sold it to people around the area. They were busy chopping down trees every day. They lived in a little cottage in the middle of the forest, and they didn't meet with people very often, but they heard about this, and a bag of gold sounds fun. The eldest brother said, "Well, I'm a pretty good woodcutter. I'm more than that. I'm a really good carpenter. I think I could build a ship. Maybe I could build a ship that sails on land." And he took his great axe, and he went down and he found a tree, and he began to chop it down. Oh, really heavy. Well, it was a very hot and sticky day, and the axe was heavy, and the eldest brother got really tired, really sticky, and really grumpy, the way you do when you work too hard and you don't think you're going to get anywhere. And all of a sudden, when he was taking a very short break to wipe his face, down flew a magpie, you know, one of those black and white birds. And the bird came and danced in front of him and went, "What you doing? What you doing? What you doing? What you doing?" "Oh," said the brother, feeling very cross and grumpy. "Oh, I'm making wooden spoons." "Wooden spoons, wooden spoons," said the magpie, and flew away. And after that, every scrappy cut, every chip just became a wooden spoon. And the more he cut, the more wooden spoons he had, and soon he had a whole pile of wooden spoons, and that was no good. What could he do? He stamped his feet. "Huh, made a noise, and he was very disgruntled, and off he went home. Well, the second brother thought, oh, he gives up too easily. He always did. I could do better. I'm a good carpenter as well. I just need a chance to show it. So he picked up the heavy axe and he went down to the forest and he found a tree and he began to cut. Oh! 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 It was, as I said, very hot and heavy work, and before long he was so thirsty and so tired, and he'd forgotten to bring a drink with him, and he was just standing there wiping his face, when down flew that magpie again. "What you doing? What you doing? What you doing? What you doing?" said the magpie. The second brother was not in a good mood, and so he said exactly the same thing his brother had said. "Oh, go away, I'm just making wooden spoons." "Wooden spoons, wooden spoons, wooden spoons, wooden spoons," said the magpie, and flew off. And just like his older brother, every chip he cut, every scrap of the tree, turned into another wooden spoon. So soon he had a mountain of wooden spoons. That wasn't any good either. So he stamped his feet, grunted in annoyance, and off he went home. The youngest brother thought, I think I could be a good carpenter. I've never really had the chance to try. I'll go and have a go. I can't do worse than my brothers. And he went down to the forest. Now he was a bit younger and a bit smaller, and the axe was very heavy. Well, he picked it up and he set to work with a will, and after a while he was chipping and cutting away, and suddenly down flew the magpie. The boy stopped to look at the magpie in surprise, and especially when the magpie said to him, "What you doing? What you doing? What you doing? What you doing?" "Oh," said the boy, "I'm trying to make a ship that sails on land, but I don't think I'm very good at it." "A ship that sails on land! A ship that sails on land!" said the magpie, and flew away. And after that, every scrap that the boy cut, every chip of the tree became part of a ship. Even the leaves that fell from the tree turned into beautiful sails. And very soon he had a whole ship. Well, what could he do when he saw the ship formed and ready to sail in front of him? The boy laughed, and he climbed into the ship. He put his hands on the ship's wheel, and as he did that, the ship began to sail. But it sailed through the forests. It sailed and sailed and sailed through the forests, until it sailed out into the open fields. It sailed and it sailed and it sailed till he came to a field. And in the field there stood a man. It was a big man, and he was standing by a table, and the table was right in the middle of the field, but it was piled high with food. Think of a food you like, it would have been there. Pizza, crisps, broccoli, chips, or every type of food. But the man was just stuffing his face with food, munching and crunching and swallowing. But the more he ate, the more he munched and crunched. The more he held his tummy and went, "Oh, I am so hungry." The boy got out of the ship and stared at the man in surprise. "What you doing?" he said. "Oh," said the man, "my problem is that I can never get enough to eat. The more I eat, the hungrier I get. I don't think there's anywhere in the world that could serve me with enough food." What about a king's palace?" said the boy. "Look, get into the ship with me. Come to the palace, and maybe they'll have enough food for you there." So the man got into the boat. So now we have the woodcutter. So give him a cheer. Yeah! And we have someone with a superpower. We have Hungry Man. So that's right, Hungry Man. So what you do is you hold your tummy and you go, "Hungry Man." Your turn. That's right. Well, they sailed and they sailed and they sailed through the fields till they came to a field. And in the field stood a man. Now, he was standing at a table right in the middle of the field as well. But this time the table was covered not with things to eat, but with things to drink. There was juice, and there was squash and beer and anything else you could imagine you wanted. And the man was picking up bottles and cartons, and he was glug, 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 glugging them down. But the more he drank, the more he held his throat and went, "I'm so thirsty." The young woodcutter got out of the boat. "What's wrong?" he said. "Oh," said Thirsty Man, whatever I drink, I can never find enough to drink. I'm so thirsty." "Ah," said the boy, "look, get into the boat and come to the palace. There might be enough for you to drink at a palace." So into the boat got the second man. So now we have in the boat, we have the woodcutter. Give him a cheer. Yeah. And we have a hungry man. So let's do the hungry man. Hungry man. And now we have a new superhero with a new superpower. Thirsty man. So give him a cheer too. Well, the boat sailed and it sailed and it sailed through the fields till it came to a field. And in the middle of the field stood a woman. Now she was walking across the field, but she was dragging behind her a whole oak tree, roots, branches, the lot. What are you doing? Said the boy, getting out of the boat. Oh, said the woman, I'm just taking home a new broom to sweep my house. A new broom, said the young woodcutter. Oh, you must be very strong. Am I? Said the woman, and she lifted the oak tree, roots, branches and all, onto her shoulders. I suppose I am. Oh, look, come with me, said the boy. I'm going to the palace. I'm sure there would be something useful for you to do there, and bring your tree. So the woman and the oak tree got into the boat. That's somebody else with a superpower. So now we have, are you ready? The boy, give him a cheer. Yeah! And we have hungry man, ready? Hungry man! And we have thirsty man, thirsty man! But now we also have strong woman. So give her a cheer. Strong woman! Well, the boat sailed and sailed and sailed through the fields till it came to a field. And standing in the middle of the field was a woman. But she was looking up at the sky. She was puffing out her cheeks and blowing. And as she blew, all the clouds separated and sped across the sky. The boy got out of the boat and stared in wonder. What are you doing? He said. Oh, said the woman, I'm just trying to get my washing dry. That's very clever, said the boy. I've never heard of anyone who could blow the clouds away like that. Get in the boat with me and come to the palace. I'm sure there'll be work for you there. So into the boat got, you've guessed, somebody else with a special power, woman who blows the clouds. So now we've got in the boat, we've got the woodcutter. Yes! We've got hungry man, hungry man. We've got thirsty man, thirsty man. We've got strong woman. And we've got woman who blows the clouds, woman who blows the clouds. That's a really interesting group. Well, they sailed and they sailed and they sailed till they came to the palace. Well, the king met them at the palace. He was astonished to see a boat that sailed on the land and very pleased. But he wasn't so happy when he saw that it had been built by a poor woodcutter boy. This wasn't his intention. And the bag of gold that he gave the boy was very, very small. The boy didn't seem to mind, but the king was still not happy, and he said, look, I know I said that the person who could build me a ship that sailed on the land could marry the princess, but there's a problem. You see, when you want to hold a wedding, you have to get rid of all the old food and you have to make new food. So the kitchen has to be emptied and the food has to be all made from new. And I'm afraid at the moment, our kitchens are stuffed with food. Why, I think there's enough food to last for days, weeks, months, even a year. So we can't hold the wedding. Sorry. The boy looked round and saw a hungry man. I think this is a job for you, he said, and off went hungry man to the kitchen, where he stuffed his face and he ate and he munched and he crunched and he gobbled and he gulped, until by lunchtime there wasn't a scrap of food left in the kitchen, and the boy went back to the king. The king wasn't very happy, but he had a think and he said, well, that's one problem solved, but there's still another. You see, if you want to hold a wedding in this country, you have to make sure that you have to create drinks and brew beer from fresh. You have to get rid of all the old drink. And I'm afraid that in our cellars, there's enough to drink to last for days, weeks, months, perhaps a year or two. Sorry, we can't hold the wedding. The boy looked round. This is a job for Thirsty Man, he said, and he sent Thirsty Man down to the cellar. Thirsty Man gulped and guzzled and glugged, and by supper time, there wasn't a drop left in that cellar. That was good, said Thirsty Man, but I'm still thirsty. The king wasn't very happy. In fact, he wasn't happy at all. And he said, right, I see I'm going to have to take more drastic action. I've got to get rid of this woodcutter. So he called for the army. He got the whole army together with their helmets and their shields and their swords and their armour, and he pointed at the boat and he said, "Go and get that woodcutter. You're going to get rid of him." The army all began to march towards the boat, and there were a lot of them. It was a big army. "I think this is a job for strong woman," said the young woodcutter. Well, she went out with her oak tree. She lifted it and she began to twirl in great circles. And you know that as the oak tree hit the army one by one, they did somersaults up into the sky, and they all landed in different places. Some of them landed in the duck pond on the top of their helmets, which was kind of painful. But the whole army said, "We're not going after that woodcutter again. You'll have to get somebody else to do it because we can't." They all went on strike. The king sighed and said, "If you want anything done round here, it's always the same. You have to go and do it yourself." So he put on his own armour. He picked up his own spear, his own sword, his shield. He climbed on his beautiful white charger, and he set off at a gallop to get the woodcutter. You can imagine the horse drumming along as it's going along, and the king getting closer and closer. The boy thought, this is a job for a woman who blows the clouds. She puffed out her cheeks and she blew, and the wind carried the horse, and it carried the king up, 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 up into the sky, over the clouds, and so far away that nobody ever found out where he landed. Well, after that, the country hadn't got a king. Well, they needed a king, or so they thought, so they looked round for a new king. And can you guess who they chose? You're right, they chose the young woodcutter to be their new king. And he ruled well and wisely with the help of Hungry Man and Thirsty Man and Strong Woman and Woman Who Blows the Clouds. But whether he ever married the princess, my story doesn't tell. Because I think that was up to the woodcutter and the princess. Don't you? And that's the story of the ship that sails on land. Now, if you come to try out the project, there are 5 little topics. The first one is about genies. And if you want a story about a genie, I'll send you a link, because Sparky the Genie tells his own story on another video. And you might be interested in that one. So if you want another story, there's one ready, and you can follow the links to it. Now, in folk tales and fairy tales, people live in different sorts of houses. There's kings would live in palaces. The woodcutters lived in a cottage in the forest. There's even a story where a woman lives in a vinegar bottle, a glass bottle, and she's not very happy, but when a genie gives her a better house, she doesn't like it, and she ends up going back to her vinegar bottle. I think that's one of the strangest houses I've heard of. And of course, some people live in stories, live in haunted houses, in caves. Where would be a good place for a dragon to live? There's lots of different places dragons live. Or, well, you can imagine for yourself. So you can try out the idea of creating some really unusual houses. Then, as I said, there's one downloadable module on kings. Now I've told you the story about the king who sailed on the ship which sailed on the land. I'll get that right in a minute. Maybe you can think up some more stories about kings who did very silly things. Or maybe you could design yourself the best crown ever. There is another story for younger children about a king, and I'll send you the link to that one. A king who tried to build a tower to the moon. And that's on one of the bunny hop stories, and I'll send you the link to that as well. We couldn't have the topic of fairy stories without a module on dragons. Now, I think there are so many different stories about dragons. They are the best storybook characters ever, and I really, really wish they were real. But there's so many other, I suppose, really, truly dragons are dinosaurs and prehistoric creatures, but I think storybook dragons are extra special, perhaps because they breathe fire sometimes. So I've given you a module on dragons. And then the last one, I think, is my favourite. It's about mixed up monsters, because in so many stories people have invented monsters that never ever existed, like griffins and hippogriffs and chimeras and centaurs. But maybe you could invent some of your own. Well, those are the topics. Have fun with them. And I hope you enjoy the folktale fairy tale topic module and have fun.